So, towards the end of April, I got a call from my uncle about this crazy opportunity to deliver medical supplies over to Ukraine. At first, I said no because I didn't think I'd be able to go, seeing as how I didn't have a passport. But I felt like it was something God wanted me to do, so I did some research, and turns out you can get an expedited passport if you're leaving the country within 5 days. So I got all the paperwork filled out and went to an appointment in the Twin Cities and was able to get a passport within 5 days of leaving for Ukraine. So on May 5th, we flew out from the Minneapolis airport with 14 bags full of medical supplies to deliver in Ukraine. We flew through Amsterdam and then landed in Warsaw, Poland. From there, we drove many, many hours over the course of 2 days into central Ukraine where we were going to be staying. We spent the next week and a half delivering medical supplies, packing up medical supplies that would be shipped to the front lines, and delivering food to refugees and widows in the area. This was my favorite part of the trip. The part when we were able to meet the widows and orphans and refugees living in the area and help them out with some food and supplies. Many people had just moved to this area in the last couple weeks or months because they were displaced by the war, and where we were staying was relatively safe compared to more western regions where there was actual fighting going on. So many of these people had just left with themselves, their kids, and whatever they could stick in a vehicle. And as someone who's never left the United States up until this point, it was really interesting to see people who just about everyone there would be considered poverty level in America. Most of them lived in small brick houses with a few rooms. Some of them had electricity, not all, and they had a few possessions, but nothing close to what we have today. And some of the people we met didn't even have food for the next few days, and it was only what we were able to bring to them and hopefully keep them sustained for a while. As I mentioned earlier, the place we were staying in Ukraine was relatively safe, and praise God we stayed safe the whole trip. There were a few times where I was a little nervous. One time we spent the night in a city between the drive from Poland into Ukraine, and the day after we left that city, it was bombed 3 different times. And then on the way back to Poland, we went by the same city, and all the air raid sirens started going because the Russians were about to bomb the city. And thankfully we stayed away from that, but we did see some spots that unfortunately were bombed by Russians while we were over there. Before we had even left Ukraine, we saw pictures from the front lines where they were using the medical supplies that we had sent them, and the first aid kits and the tourniquets, and it was just really mind-blowing to think that medical supplies that we had packed a few days earlier was now being used on the front lines of a war. But praise God that they were able to use them and hopefully save lives in this conflict. We landed in Minneapolis on May 20th, thankfully safely and without any issues. And it's hard to say how many lives were affected from our trip over there and will continue to be affected now that we're back in America. There are dozens and dozens of people that we were able to bring food to over there, and then all the local hospitals that we delivered medicine and medical supplies to, and then all the first aid kits and supplies that were sent to the front lines of the war in Ukraine. So I just pray that lives can be saved and all the glory of this trip goes to God. Thanks for watching. God bless.